Look at me a second. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have
That's where you want the eyes?
Yeah, because you get the camera.
Hopefully I didn't look at the camera too much. I'm Andrew McKenzie. I am a project manager. That's how I make my living, but I really enjoy acting and doing stand-up comedy. Come with me on a voyage to inside my head. I have Google Photos and I have Amazon Photos, whatever. I have these different places where I can back up on my photos, and I realize I never go back and really just look at them because there's so many. And I don't know about you, but I miss like big moments a lot with my camera, with my phone. Like I remember to bring my phone out when we're at Dave and Buster's or whatever. But like if we're at a major life event, I don't pull my phone out. So I feel like I miss some of the biggest things. I certainly wasn't going to pull my phone out when my wife was giving birth to our children. But I feel like that would be the thing you would want to really capture, but like you still feel like you can. So I don't know. But I have a lot of pictures of the kids eating corn on the cob at random places. You know, like, but maybe at the end of the day, maybe that's like what life is. Maybe it's more about those like corn on the cob eating times in between. I don't know. It's weird. That's why I think that's one thing I like about Facebook, why I can't pry myself off of it for forever. It's just the little reminders that pop up. You know, sometimes it's nice to see where I was at this time of the year 5 years ago. Like, what was I into? What was I thinking about? It's weird how much it changes. Sometimes there are some posts where I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a good way to think. Past me. I should start thinking like that again. And then there's other times where I read it and I'm like, oof, that wasn't something you need to share on social media. Maybe next time keep that one in your pocket. I try, yeah. But that was the same kind of thing. Like I didn't want to forget anything, or maybe not that I didn't want to forget everything, but I wanted to remember certain things. So I started journaling, and my kids got me this book for Christmas. It was either my birthday or for Christmas or Father's Day. It's one of those, and it was like my story kind of a thing, and it's a whole book that's just got like writing prompts in it that's meant to get you to write about yourself. And it's equal parts sweet and endearing and horrifying, because then I'm like, what do I write? Because inevitably you end up being the dad who is like only writing about what you want them to know. So it's like this fine line of wanting to tell them everything because you want your kids to know you for the most real you there is. But then there's also just like the idea, once you get there and you actually put pen to paper and you're like, you don't need to know that. Like there's no reason for you to know that. So I don't know. I sit down and I write in that a little bit once in a while. But that's why I started writing scripts, honestly. It was for the same reason I think that you're doing this, is that things that I write in my scripts are personal things that have happened. They're just coded, or they're allegorical. But I know exactly what I was doing when I wrote those. You know, like I could go back to Time Served, and I remember everything about, you know, where I would sit every night and how I would sit down and I would tell myself I'm going to write for an hour no matter what. And then same thing with The Storm. It was like, that's always going to be a correlation with COVID. And when I started writing it, COVID wasn't a thing. And yet then the two ended up having this weird relationship, because as The Storm kind of like the story of it unfolds, it's about people stuck in this bar. They can't leave because this storm is coming. They have to deal with these things. So there are like correlations and things, which I think is, in a way, is like how I deal with memories. I'm writing a third script right now that's probably the hardest one, about my dad. And I don't know, I haven't completely decided how that's going to go yet. I have like 3 or 4 different storylines for it. If you ever have that, when you sit down to write a story and you think like I could write this in a number of different ways and you don't know which one you're going to go with. So I'm at that stage right now. But that's why I like shows too. When you've been in shows or performances of any kind, it's like a benchmark for where you were in your life. And most of the time you can kind of remember, like, at least with a general sense, what life was like when you were doing that show. Because you could, and if you don't know off the top of your head, you can always find the playbill and you can see the year or the whatever. You can kind of like put into context, okay, like this is who was president. This is what major sporting event happened, or this is like, I don't know. Nowadays, it seems like in American history, there's a tragedy like every 2 years. So you can benchmark things a lot quicker. One memory for me. But maybe some other time I'll throw it up. But, yeah, that lamp, that phone, those are on the desk of the warden's office in time served. I think a lot of stuff in here is pretty new because when this place flooded, we lost a lot of stuff. Lost a whole bunch of things. And this was all, I don't know, it was probably like 3 inches of water in here. And I remember I came in here and it was really late at night or early in the morning, however you want to look at it. And I was the only one here because it just had been raining and raining and raining. So I thought, couldn't sleep, so I came down here to bail water up. And this mop bucket was tipped over. And I remember thinking, that must be where all this water came from. Someone knocked over the mop bucket. I started acting, I think, probably for the same reason everyone does, which is just to survive. Because like you act, everyone acts. And I think, or like I'm acting right now, probably. I just don't know how. And you're acting right now in a certain way. then we'll leave here and then we'll act in a totally different way, depending on what we're doing. And then you can either follow that, like you can take that and then you can make it into a career, or you can just keep acting for the rest of your life. I think most people choose not to make a career out of it, but they keep acting and they don't realize that they're doing it. That's where I think all this judgment comes from. It's easy for us to sit and watch an actor or a director or a musician or whatever, and they go through a hard time and everybody's watching them and we all judge them. But people don't realize they're all doing the same thing in their own living room. It's just they don't have anyone watching them, so they can get through it relatively unscathed. I think that's why I think most people should just acknowledge the fact that they're acting all the time. And then honestly, that leads to self-improvement, really, if you think about it. Because if we all recognize that we're acting every single day, we get up in the morning and we put on a costume of some sort, put on a wardrobe that we've picked out for this character that we think we are. And then, what's put us in that place? At some point, you got a job, and that job made you think that you were this particular character. And you had to fit this role. So you have to wear this. A lot of times, like your first job out of the gate, it's a uniform. And so that's your first wardrobe, your first costume. You play this bit part you think is going to lead to a bigger part later. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But what really matters is how much you put into that role when you have it. So then you work your way up or whatever, you work your way onto different roles. Now you got all these different, you have all these wardrobe changes. Then you can look at your closet one day and you have all these different eras that are represented, all these different characters you've ever played. And sometimes you got to make more room. So a bunch of it goes to Goodwill. You just pack it up and you ship it out. But you forget about that character when you do that. You pack up all your stuff and you put it in boxes and you donate it. Or you sell it at a yard sale. And after a while you forget about that character. So then it's easy to just think that you're just this person. But you're not. You're still just another character. But the good thing about that is if you don't like who you are, pick a different character. And people tell me I talk too much. So then there are times when I'm aware of it, and I will sit down and say, I'm not talking today. I'm not going to do it. Just not talking today. That's a character that I'm choosing to be in that moment because I think that's what the audience that I have at that particular time is going to appreciate. It's the same thing, you go into a convenience store. I stopped in a convenience store just before I came here. And you could be any number of characters. They could range from the extreme of like standing outside begging for change or going in and robbing the place. Those are all just like extreme characters, but most of us choose something in the middle where we go in and we just pick out a thing and we buy it and we leave. But even those characters have subtle nuances to them. Do you want to be the polite character who comes in and then interacts with this clerk in a nice way? And then that character, this clerk character, well, now they have a different path in their script that takes them down a different... Or do you want to be the rude person who yells at the waiter or whatever about your soup being cold? And now that waiter, who is also a character, now they have a different trajectory that you've just sent them on because you've decided to be the rude character. Well, that's how we all... It's a whole big play, the whole world. I mean, Shakespeare said that. He was pretty smart. I'm just ripping off Shakespeare right now. And I just realized it just now. I thought I was being very intelligent, very smart. And I realized I just stole it from Shakespeare. And everyone is the main character, always, all the time. You ask anybody, they're not going to ever really come out and say, oh, for sure, I'm the lead in this whole thing called life. But that's what they think. They believe it. And so they have their own soundtrack they've cooked up in their head, and they have their own ending picked out, and they're going to charge toward that ending. And for whatever reason, now you got a lot of people who think the political thing or some sort of battle has to happen. It's got to be high drama, high cost, big sweeping epic scores, blood, dripping down marble staircases. It doesn't have to be. Most of life is a pretty boring romantic comedy. It's like, if you watch old TV shows, it's like that. Like, it's mundane, like I can't get the toaster to work. But that's more fun, I think. There's more in it, the more characters you have. You have all of these diverse characters, and they all have their own storyline. Then you don't need all these big, huge, epic battles. It's not Mordor. We're not trying to throw the ring into the mountain. It's just get up and have a day. We start out, when we're young, probably the first thing we ever do is we're like vying for attention. You want to be noticed. So you act in certain ways. You might see different adults act certain ways, and so you start picking up on their tendencies and doing what they do. And then later on, as you get through school, you might see someone else. It's almost always driven by something that you want. That's where we start our behavioral patterns. It's like we see something that we want to have. We see someone else that has something that we think would be really cool. Or we see someone else's life and we think that'd be great. But we don't ever always see the entire life. We just see the role that they're playing for us. They may go home and take all the makeup off and they're miserable. But what we see, we desire. And so we chase that, and then we start to do what they're doing. And the biggest danger I've ever had in my life and in acting and comedy, any of the things that I've had the great fortune of doing, is when I've started to fall into the idea that I should be this other person. If I saw someone who was like a famous actor, director, writer, whatever, and I would model my behavior after them. And I would excuse myself. I would say, oh, well, this person had a total meltdown at the age of 29, so I should probably have that too. Because that was like the journey of this important artist. It's nonsense. It should be your own journey, just from the beginning. And I think now I have a lot more respect, now that I'm almost 40, far more respect for people that I see and especially much younger than I ever realized it, who are chasing their own path, just following their own dreams, just getting up and doing their own thing, being confident in who they are, and having relationships that they want to have because they're meaningful to them, and not conforming to some societal standard. And that, I think, is where we really have an opportunity to turn a corner globally, because we just stop trying to fit into these holes. I know that's a very like hippy dippy thing to say, but it really is true. At the end of the day, you get one life. Choose how to use it. And yeah, I don't want to make it into a rat race. I also want people climbing into my bathroom window, stealing my underwear because I reach a certain level of fame either. I literally am in the perfect place for me right now. I'm in a small town, and I have this amazing outlet with this theater group that has become like a family. And then when we all have this opportunity. I hope everybody else feels the same way I do, because to come here and be able to write things that I want to write, and have the opportunity to sometimes even put those on and perform those shows, and then be in those shows with people that I know and respect and love, is like, this is literally as good as it gets, and I never want to forget that. And I truly do. I wake up every day and I remind myself, like, this is what it really should be. Because I think whenever anybody takes in acting or stand-up, I did stand-up for a little while. I've acted on a number of different platforms and different levels, never to any major success, but I guess it depends on how you look at it. Because to me, I've absolutely made it. Like, I've made it to the greatest place I could be, which is like that healthy balance of not fame, not notoriety, but being able to still be recognized for my talents and abilities, and have people appreciate what I can do for them in a very small. It's like gratitude. Acting is gratitude. It's like showing someone something, giving them entertainment. So, and that's just a thing like that. Then I feel proud of what I have as a skill set. Otherwise, I kind of need a tendency as an actor or a comedian, if you don't make it to a certain level, you feel like a failure, or you feel like it's not a legitimate enterprise. It's not important. But it is important. You just interrupt me. Or wave your arms. Just wave your arms, and then I'll stop. Because otherwise I'll just keep going because I think I'm supposed to.
No, that's okay. So far you've been saying a lot of stuff.
That is the truest thing anyone's ever said about me. I hear that a lot. You've been saying things. I discovered at a young age that if I was performing for people, it was the best way to get them to take me seriously. Ironically enough, if I was telling jokes, if the jokes hit on a certain level, the adults would think that you were sophisticated or something, at least that you could hang. And so I think that's where my performing started, was when I was young. Just wanting to be noticed and stand out, because I was never really anything. I was a very normal kid, very average. Quiet in public, talked nonstop around my parents and the people that I knew and was comfortable with. And so I think then, as you grow up, you start to learn very quickly what's not ideal about you. People are never short of criticism, I think, in our culture, too. When you grow up, you eat too fast, you talk too much, you talk too fast, or whatever. They start pointing out in little subtle ways how you're gaining a little weight and you look a little chubby around the face. It's little things like that, we all do to each other. Our parents have all done to us. And we never see really the full effects of it until later. And so like years and years of all these things, what you're doing is you're building out this perfect character, ultimately. Taking all of the criticisms you've ever heard from anyone and you're paring them down into what you should be. And that's a character. It's exhausting. No one can do that all the time. It's not sustainable. No one could be in a play their entire lives. It just doesn't work. So we can't expect each other to do that in real life either. So, but yeah, things got a little weird. I ended up marrying that particular woman who helped me out, helped me get into theater and that kind of thing. Then we moved to a small town. And again, thought this would be great. I'll have an opportunity to be this new whatever I need to be. Her dad was really into hunting, the outdoors, all this stuff, fixing everything. He was very mechanically inclined, which I hadn't been up to that point because I just never had experience to it. So I loved it. I absolutely loved this because now I'm building things, I'm fixing things, I'm making things, I'm hunting, I'm processing my own meat, I'm doing all these things I never did before. So now I feel like I'm becoming this very well-rounded individual. And again, it's all because of the same theories I take with me to act with. It's just find a character, latch on, and learn everything you can about them. And I do that in life, and I think that's why it feels like I've lived 100 lives, because every single small chunk of time is like a play. It's like a different play that I'm in. And I get to play usually the lead because I'm casting myself as whatever I want to be. But that I think that kind of mindset took its toll. And after a while, after having 2 kids and initially doing some things that I never thought I would do, again, it was like self-justification. Well, the really good artists always go through these things where it's like, they'll get drunk, or they'll use, or they'll cheat on a spouse, or they'll whatever. And so you start to kind of think in your own head, whether you know it or not, you're kind of self-aggrandizing your own inner turmoil, your own problems. And you're justifying it. Like, well, if I go through this, then I'll be a better artist, because that seems to be the trajectory for every true Hollywood story that's ever aired. But and I've realized, I think, since then that you don't have to do that. It's just about enjoying the journey. Find a character you want to play. And now I try to pick roles that are a positive influence, whether it's on me or my family. Like the last show that we did was Willy Wonka. And being cast as Willy Wonka was amazing. It was a great experience. But better than that was the fact that my own son was cast as Mike TV, and we got to be in the show together. And so now I'm writing, or just finished a second script, hoping that at some point in time we can actually do it and perform it, because I have roles in there written for my kids. And for them to see me to take this thing, this acting thing and this performing thing, the stand-up comedy, all the stuff that's kind of like driven my life sometimes into the ground, and to take it and turn it around and make it this positive force of entertainment for people. But also, you can kind of bury messages into your plays, or you can take a character that you think stands for something that you stand for. Or even if you take a character that is the absolute opposition of what you believe or what you stand for, and making that character learn something along the way, or showing that character is still a human being, and bringing that to the public, I think goes a long way. And I think that's where, again, not to make theater or acting or comedy this great and important thing, but it really is. It's a great and important thing. The arts are a way for us to communicate things to each other without being offensive, without being violent, without being aggressive. We can still put those things in our films or in our plays. We can show tragedy without actual loss of life. And we can pull out emotions. There's times that you sit in front of a commercial and I'll get teary-eyed. It's just about the way we structure the shots, the writing, the acting, all of it together. We literally can control each other's emotions. And if we keep it in a mindset that is made to bring about awareness, to help each other, as the Greeks would have had catharsis, to pull that stuff out and lay it all out and look at it and deal with it, then I think we'll be okay. I'm losing my hair. I have male pattern baldness. It's not going to come back because I'm not doing anything about it actively. I gain weight all the time. Sometimes I'm able to lose weight just in time for a show or something, but a lot of times I'm not. And I still get roles. And I think it's because I don't act anything. Number one, I choose my roles carefully. Well, as carefully as I can. But I pick things that I can relate to. And so I have a starting point, like a humanity. And then when you start acting, when people like you is when they feel like they could be you. So even if you're overweight by whatever the current standards are, or if you're not the standard of beauty or attractiveness or whatever. You step into a role and you start playing it in a way that makes someone else feel like they're you, and you're doing all the things they want to do, then they're going to like you. And all of the themes that are going around today are all universal. They're very universal. So if we pick things that are real and that are based on everyday struggles that everyone has, I think then you'll just automatically be a good actor. We have so much entertainment at our fingertips all the time. You can stream anything. And if you can't find it, I mean, somebody has it. You can literally go back now. You can order copies of your favorite show as a child in the format it was originally released on. Just for fun, just for novelty's sake. Like, you could get 8 tracks of your favorite whatever. You can get beta tapes. You can get whatever. And it's become like this, I don't know, all these vintage arcade games that now fit in your palm of your hand. So we all literally can jump around in the timeline of our own lives. If we get bored with where we are right now, we just go back in time to when we remember it was great. But you know why we knew it was great? It was because we were in the moment. Like in the 80s, I didn't have the ability to fast forward or go back. I just had the 80s. And it was great because I was on my bike and I was riding around and I was doing whatever I wanted to. And now I look back on that with nostalgia. I realize half the time if we spend the time we have now going back to that, we're missing out on what this could be. And I think there's just created like an unrest within us as humans. We don't know where we sit anymore. Like, we can't wait to get out of this. Whatever this is, we got to get out of it and get to the next thing. It's like you binge watch shows. You get the little countdown thing before it's going to start the next one. And even that is like, people are like, okay, I get it. 9 seconds before the next episode. Okay. You got a timer countdown?
It's at 7 seconds.
Perfect. And cut. Just kidding.
Is it weird to like talk to someone without them really saying anything back?
No, I do that my entire life. That's my whole life.
Usually, like